The second generation Ford Mondeo is now a quarter of a century old. Back in the day, in 2001 when this car was released in the UK, it was everywhere. It was a taxi, it was a police car, it was bought by families, it was a repmobile that would blast up and down the country's motorways. But now, 25 years later, you don't really see them. So for this generation Mondeo, Ford didn't actually use the new edge design language, the thing that they'd used in the Ford Focus, the Ka, the Kuga. Instead, they went with what I can only describe as an edge design language, because this car is all edges. You've got the straight edges here and here, here and here, drawn with a ruler, but in a very modern way, to the point where I think this car still looks quite relevant on the roads today, and it's not actually looking that retro yet. So like the outside styling, the inside is also what I would call quite inoffensive. Ford went with a more Germanic style for the interior. Instead of the swooping round edges of the previous car, they've gone for all very sensible, upright and business-like interior, which is, you know, cars like the B5 Passat that they would have been aiming to compete with. But what's this car actually like to drive 25 years later? Fortunately, we've got an absolutely fantastic example of one. This is a 50,000 mile car with 20 main dealer service stamps in the book, and everything is absolutely spotless in this car. So it's like a brand new Mondeo. So quite excited to drive it and finally find out what these things are like, because I've been in them as a taxi. You know, I've seen them for many years, but never actually had the chance to drive one. So a big thanks to Zach from IGM Pedigree Motors, who's lent me this car. So I think the thing that's striking me really with this car is that it's very smooth, very quiet and refined. The way this car feels to drive right from the off is very high class. So it's a weird combination of like a car that they've designed to feel like a very quality German car, at least to drive, but then obviously they've had to cut costs somewhere because this car wasn't as expensive as some of its rivals. They're kind of like fairly low rent plastics. I think it's just the way they look. They don't look premium. They look built to a certain budget. But it's got that very pleasing sort of heft to the steering that you only really got with cars of this era. It feels like you're driving a proper machine, you know, instead of just, I don't know, interacting with a big computer, which is what obviously most modern cars feel like. Yeah, the gear change is really nice and smooth. The suspension is pretty comfortable. It's got decent chunky tyres on it, on these steel wheels which came with the LX. That's dating this car somewhat, I think, because you just don't get steel wheels on cars like this anymore. Although you don't actually get cars like this anymore, do you? So now this car is the LX, so it's not actually that well equipped, but it is still surprisingly good. It's got a front heated screen, which was a Ford speciality at the time, and it's also got automatic climate control with air conditioning, which is working, which is absolutely brilliant on a day like this. When you up the temperature, it kind of switches between 2 bars and 1 bar, and I think that's telling you that you've gone up half a step, but it doesn't really make any sense. It's just cold or hot, and most automatic climate control systems now will have a temperature. In fact, I think some of the versions of this car did have that option where you could select a temperature that the car would keep the interior to. I've got this big clock front and centre, which I always say a clock is when you try and make something luxurious, you need to put a clock in there. It's got electric windows in the front but not the back, and it's got cruise control, which on a car like this is brilliant because this car is designed for cruising. It's a very smooth car. The dials are not all that massively interesting to look at. You do have some interesting little warning lights like the icicle symbol that comes up if it's 3 degrees or less. But you do have a nice rudimentary trip computer which can be adjusted by pressing the button on the end of the stalk, and you can switch between the current outside temperature, how many miles you've got left, what MPG you're currently doing. It works really well. I remember this from my Ford Kuga and I really liked it. It was just simple but effective, and then you can control the radio with this big blocky thing here underneath, which is kind of quite Renault-ish. It has probably what I would say is one of the best cup holders I've seen in a car in a long time. It's a pop-out cup holder, but it doesn't get in the way of anything. It doesn't get in the way of the gear stick, it doesn't get in the way of the controls on the stereo or the heating controls, and it doesn't get in the way of your arm because it's not down here. That is top marks, and it fits the fat bottom bottle, so Ford of the year 2001, well done. Got a sunglasses holder up top, plenty of little cubbies. I've got the glove box, I've got a little tiny thing down here which hides the power outlet, as well as a little one to the side of the steering wheel, and a another cup holder in the centre. It has an enormous boot, which obviously with the seats folded down means you can fit even more stuff in it, and it's a hatchback. Now this car was available as a saloon as well, but that's quite rare. And of course if that boot isn't big enough, there's also an estate version of this car. Ford had this thing called the Intelligent Protection System. It meant it had things like airbags, and they made sure that the crash structure was strong. But it also had a computer system which would basically decide when to deploy the airbags based on things like the position of the front seat, and you know, an airbag going off in your face really close might need to use less force. Now despite all that, it only achieved a 4-star Euro NCAP, but that was actually the highest score that any car had achieved at that time. So it was a very safe car for its time, and it even had things like side curtain airbags, and it had ABS and electronic brake force distribution as well. So it had ways to keep you out of the accident in the first place. What do you think of it, pal? It's well good, isn't it? I've got loads of room, lots of knee room, plenty of headroom. Sat behind you with your driving position, 6 foot tall. Obviously Ford knew what they were doing, packaging this car for, you know, as a taxi, police car, crims in the back and all that. It's only the LX model, so it's a bit Spartan. I've got windy windows. Do they go all the way down? Nope, so I can't do that. The seats are actually surprisingly sort of comfortable and spongy. As many a car dealer would say, they look like they've never been sat in. No armrest, but there is a centre headrest which pops up, which is nice. Little ashtray down here. Pocket on the back of the seat for the passenger, but not the driver's side. It's quite nice with this sort of pale coloured headlining, quite nice and airy and bright in here. You kind of like suit being Mondeo man, to be honest, mate. I mean, I can see myself driving this around, yeah. I'm not too precious to drive an old Mondeo. So there were a few engine options for the Mondeo. Obviously petrol and diesel, 1.8 and a 2 litre petrol. This is the 2 litre, and I think it's what I'm going to call the sweet spot for this car, because it's super smooth, it's got enough power, it's got 140 horsepower, which is actually not a bad amount. It does 0 to 60 in 9.3 seconds, so it's definitely not slow, and it's got plenty of performance to sort of kick along on the motorway. And as we speed up now, I mean, this has got 5-speed gearbox, so 70 miles an hour is about 3,000 RPM. Pretty good cruiser, like just blast along this road, nice and smooth and quiet. As I say, this is a 5-speed manual car, but you could also get it as a 6-speed or a 4-speed automatic, but apparently the automatic gearboxes were not quite so robust. This car really is the sweet spot for reliability. You've got the 2 litre petrol engine and you've got the 5-speed manual gearbox, so it only gets 36 miles per gallon, and you'd get even less with an auto gearbox, but that's perfectly okay, 36 average, you know, if you weren't doing too many miles. So it's got a nice comfortable ride quality, and it's a good cruiser on the motorway, but presumably that means it's not going to be all that good in the corners, because, you know, it's difficult to engineer both. But because we had Richard Parry-Jones at the helm of design for this car, he managed to achieve something that is very difficult, and that is a very good balance between handling and ride and comfort. So therefore this car, it does handle well. It feels like quite a modern car in the way it goes around corners. You know, it's surprisingly good car to drive in general. Is it a classic or a retro car yet? And I think I was saying this in the start of the video, that in some ways it doesn't feel it, because it's almost too modern for its own good, you know. They're designed to be a very forward-looking thing with the straight edges and creases and things that all cars have now. Despite this particular car being 20 years old and the design of it 25 years old, it still feels relatively contemporary, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, isn't it? Depends what you want. If you want a classic retro car, then you might have to wait a few more years for this car to become one. But if you just want a car that will blend in and still look relatively modern, then the Ford Mondeo is not a bad shout, is it? Now, having said that, there is one version of this Mondeo that is kind of very quickly becoming a classic, and that is the ST220, which was the hot version of the Mondeo, and it had a 3 litre V6 in it with 220 horsepower, 0 to 60 in around 7 seconds. That's a cool car, because it actually, the shape of this car, while I think it's quite sort of sensible and inoffensive, when it's hotted up in the bright metallic blue with the body kit and the big wheels, and it has brought out the design of this Mondeo in a good way. So the big question, how does this car hold up a quarter of a century later? Well, surprisingly well. It's a very comfortable and relaxing car, good cruiser, but at the same time it handles well. It's got enough performance, it's a little bit boring to look at, shall we say, both on the inside and out. So it's not a pulse racing, set your hair on fire kind of car, unless maybe you go for the ST version, which is a pretty cool car. But for what it was meant for, which is, as I say, a family car, a taxi, a police car, everything, it's just an all-round, well-rounded car. Now, obviously, you need to try, and if you're going to buy one, you need to find one that's in good condition, like this car. So thank you again to Zach for lending me this brilliant example. If you want to see the next version of this car, third generation or Mark IV, that was also a very impressive car, if not a little bit big. Please do click up there. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.